Yo everyone, I'm your friendly neighborhood podcaster Zen here, and I'd like to welcome you to a new podcast named Unmasked. This is the first episode, and in this episode, I'll be giving an introduction into who I am. Who is Zen? Well, starting off, my pronouns are he, him. My birthday is on June 2nd. Talking about my likes and my dislikes. My favorite game is Minecraft. It's a video game, a sandbox game, filled with all of these blocks where you can basically make, craft, and do whatever you want. I love how the community, or being able to be there to see how the community has grown over time from over 10 years ago to now. It's a game that I got into when I was watching my sister play. Just curious about what she was playing, and I just loved how you could really do anything, that there wasn't a strict objective that you needed to follow. And that really opened me to a world where I could do things such as building, playing survival, PvP, as well as be involved with the online following of that game. And I has been able to meet so many unique, talented, interesting, kind people. And more about my friends, both in real life and online, as well as my family. I love talking to my loved ones. Just having long conversations about whatever has been going on in our lives, or even beyond that. It's always been it's been a pleasure to really talk with them and keep talking with them. It's partly what inspired me to start this podcast. I'm also a fan of the WWE and wrestling in general. I also love AEW, which in my opinion is the more interesting wrestling show in my mind, at least with what I've been watching so far. One of my favorite wrestlers is CM Punk, and I know that he doesn't have the best reputation, but he's someone that when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, really inspired me to have confidence in myself, to speak up when there's problems, and just to be myself. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, definitely. But apart from that, I've also been interested in people like Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, The Rock, Bray Wyatt, and bless his heart. And I really mourned for the passing of Bray Wyatt. I wonder if we can talk about that some other time, but moving on, because, and I just want to also add that these aren't all of my likes, these are just a couple. Talking about my dislikes now, I've got quite the disgust for insects. Mind you, there's some insects that I do tolerate, like if they're small, like whether it be a small spider or a fly or something like that, or like an ant, I can tolerate them. But when there's pretty big spiders, when there's mosquitoes, that's when I sort of become concerned. I don't necessarily have that much of a phobia, but it becomes very distracting, and it really makes me think about, okay, I gotta kill this. I gotta make sure, but at the same time, there's a spider. This room is kind of active, just quickly moving along my wall. Ah, God, if it if it crawls under the bed or something, I don't know. I just don't want it to be crawling on my skin or anything. Another dislike that I have is our passive aggressive people. There's been several passive aggressive people in my life, such as with my teachers. I remember that I had an industrial technology teacher when I was in high school, and every single day when I was going to that class, I really just wish that things would be easy, wouldn't need to be so hard, because if I made mistakes and if I had to go up to him or whatnot, he was quite passive aggressive, and I could sort of understand that, because I'm not. There's definitely times when I make mistakes, but I just acknowledge that I'm still along that learning curve, that I'm still on that learning path, and that it's just a class that I wanted to take for fun. But unfortunately, it was anything but fun. Talking about my strengths and my weaknesses, a lot of the strengths that I have, at least the ones that come to my mind, are my mind. For example, I think that I'm quite the synthetic thinker. That is a term that, or a phrase that rather doesn't get thrown around that often, but what it essentially means is that I'm someone that can make quite interesting connections from one topic to another, or several connections, in a way that can be quite creative. I'm also open to learning new things. I just love learning a little bit of everything, whether that be from psychology or pedagogy, which is sort of like the study of education, from sociology to political science, cosmology to philosophy to religion. There's just a lot of things that capture my academic eye and keep me intrigued for a while until it doesn't. Another asset of mine is my creativity, or what I would consider creativity. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I am no different. There is a song by the famous American songwriter named Jimmy Buffett called Margaritaville. And it's insane how, from that one song, he was able to really build an empire. There was songs or hotels, cruise ships, restaurants, all inspired from that one song. And so I think, okay, if I'm gonna think about how this could partly relate to the VTuber community, and specifically for Holostars English, if you were to make a cruise ship or a hotel or an amusement park or any sort of attractive public sphere themed after their songs, what would they be like in Minecraft? Talking about my weaknesses now. As much as I like to think that my mind is one of my greatest assets, it's also one of my biggest weaknesses. It's what you would call a double-edged sword. And with some facets, such as with my memory, there are things where I don't want to forget certain memories, but unfortunately I do. Sometimes that's with topics such as with birthdays, or sometimes even names or past vacations. But I try to deal with that with various techniques. One of the common techniques that I usually do is just to write down those memories into documents. I'm someone who wrote an autobiography. I started when I was in middle school and finished at the end of my high school. I finished that autobiography because I felt like I just wanted to continue on from my past rituals, which included writing that autobiography, and just move on to whatever was next for me when it came to college. And unfortunately, I had wished that I um, continued that autobiography because there's just been a lot that's just been happening in the last 4 years or so. There's COVID. For me, it's the classes, the academic journey that I've been continuing on with college. It's the new friends that I've made along the way. It's everything held even now to this point where I'm making a podcast. It's just been a long journey for the last 4 years. And there's definitely going to be things that I'm going to be forgetting within, like, about those past 4 years in the future. And with podcasts like this, it's almost like part of that archive. My attention isn't also that great. There are times when I'm just sitting in class and I'm trying to take notes, but my mind just wanders off to something else. That's something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. Part of the reason why I lose attention, and to an extent why people lose attention, is partly because of the lack of interest. If there's information that you don't really find appealing or useful, it's only natural that you wouldn't pay attention to it. There are other times, though, where I should be paying attention to things, whether that be in work or helping out my family with certain tasks at home, or I just don't pay attention. And it's hard. It's definitely hard. I wouldn't say that I have a problem with attention in order to an extent that it would be considered like a mental disorder, but it's just been something that's been a recurring problem in my life. Talking about my favorite types of music, one of my favorite genres is rock. When I was in middle school, that was definitely a genre that I really loved. I would always listen to it when I was on the bus on my way to school. And one of my favorite bands while on my way to school, sorry, very new to podcasting, is Living Color. That jingle at the beginning, the intro to my podcast, was the first couple of notes of Cult of Personality. I got introduced to that song because of CM Punk, but I think that the song just means more to me than CM Punk. It's almost, in my way, almost been a song that pretty much gives me encouragement, a song that gives me confidence. And it's interesting to me how it sort of gives me that boost, the same way that it did over 10 years ago. I'm just glad that it still works today to give me that confidence. And I wonder, if there's any listeners out there listening to this podcast, if you have that certain song that can improve your mood or your confidence, let me know in the comment section down below. There's the genre of classical music that I also enjoy. My arguably favorite composer is Chopin, and my favorite song of his is Ballad 1 in Opus 23 in G minor. It's a song that I got introduced to because I'm a fan of anime, and the anime Your Lie in April at the end of the series featured this song. And I won't go into detail of what the anime is about. You can check that out if you'd like. But it's a song where there's just so much raw emotion with how it was portrayed in the context of the anime. There's so much raw emotion between joy, sorrow, acceptance. It's really at the, coming towards that point of acceptance when it comes to grief. And for me, when I was listening to this song for the first time from that anime, it was quite appropriate considering that I was going through a time of grief myself. I'm also a fan of Johann Sebastian Bach. I'm sorry that I butchered that name. And my favorite song of his is Air on G String. What I love about classical music, just like with Chopin and various other composers, is that there's just so much emotion and color, in a sense, invested into those pieces. And if you ever need a song to listen to relax, Air on G String is definitely one of my go-tos when I want to relax. I also love the songs from Hololive and Holostars. End of a Life from Calliope Mori from Hololive English is a song that comes to my mind when I think of songs by her. It's a song that she talks about her past and what she thinks going to be happening in her future. And I just love how she was able to put so much about her life in such little time in that song. I also love songs from Hololive Indonesia. My favorite from theirs was, I believe this was during an anniversary, when they did a cover of Bebas. It's a song that when I first heard it, it just stuck in my mind, and I often found myself humming it throughout the day. I also gotta show some love to the Holostars. They made, the JP and the English side, they made a cover of Yata. It's kind of a silly song, a catchy one at that too. But the way that each of the boys brings their own kind of unique style of singing made really for a great song. Talking about my goals in relation to the VTuber community, I want to continue and maybe one day finish this book series called Nomology. And it's essentially a series about a slime who's a god and comes down to Earth after several millions or more years of being shunned by humans off of the Earth. It's a re-envisionment of the lore of this one VTuber named Namochi. It all really just started off as a joke that she called herself a non-combatant, and I just thought, nah, she is actually a fierce weapon that should not be reckoned with. She is an absolute god. And that just really took off from there, and I'll talk about Nomology in another episode, but it's just too long for me to get into considering the other things that I need to talk about. There is also my goal of wanting to help a VTuber named Lo-Fi Wi-Fi with his channel, and in several ways I have done that. I am his livestream moderator. I also get timestamps and clips for him for his TikTok and his YouTube. I've also helped celebrate his birthday along with his fans, the Bread Loaves, by making several projects. And I also hope to continue in other ways to help Lo-Fi with his channel. I partly help Lo-Fi because I want to become a VTuber myself. And with things like moderation of a live stream chat, I think that those kind of experiences will help me if I ever do become a VTuber. I've also done other things, such as with this podcast, to help me along that learning path. I think that this podcast is really going to help me in terms of being able to speak comfortably with an audience, even though that this isn't a live stream, I still think that this is good practice for me to get comfortable in speaking, I guess even not just to myself, but knowing that this is going to be put on a YouTube channel, then this is going to be shared publicly, is having that pressure being somewhat alleviated is going to help me in the long run. I should also mention that it's not set in stone of whether or not I really want to become a VTuber. I'm putting myself through these sort of tests, through things like the moderation of Lo-Fi's chat and with the podcast, to see, do I really have what it takes to become a VTuber? People will have varying opinions if I should really just be starting off with these smaller experiences, or if I just go headstrong, head first, just dive into that experience. But for me, I want to take a different sort of trajectory. If I'm ever going to get to that point, it's going to be slowly but gradually, with various stories and experiences that'll help me along the way before I ever decide to hit that live button as a VTuber. Talking about my hobbies now, singing is something that I have done ever since, as far as I could possibly remember. I'm Filipino, and at the Filipino family gatherings that I've had a long time ago, in my house we had this karaoke machine, and I would sing songs like Hotel California by the Eagles and Hey Jude by the Beatles. And it could just because I was young at the time, but my family was just really supportive with me singing, and my mom, or it could be my dad also, that they just decided to sign me up for vocal lessons. And I did practice quite a bunch there, but my vocal teacher just told me that I should wait a little bit until I'm older for my voice to develop, and that's when I could really start with the physical developments, being able to really start training. It's arguable if that was the right choice or not, but continuing on, there was another time when I continued my vocal lessons with another teacher and in a different place, around when I started high school, I believe, but I didn't stay there for too long because I just became more busy with high school and trying to make adjustments and to focus on my studies. But now, because I'm a part of the fan base of the VTuber community, being surrounded by all of these artists, by singers, it's what inspired me to really go back and to make things like my Twitter voices of my covers, with another project that'll be coming up, to really just enjoy singing, and partly it's a stress reliever. So getting into all of that again and doing it publicly is something that I've just quite enjoyed. Also, because, as I've mentioned, the world of VTubers is just has so many talented people. There are some people who are voice actors, even though, at least from what I've heard, it's kind of like a niche community. I've mentioned Holostars, and from Holostars English, from the Guild Tempest, from Vanguard, Machina X Flayon. Oh man. I never really gave voice acting that much of a thought until I just really heard him practice his voice acting, and just how much energy and character that he brings to that kind of art really inspired me to start trying to voice act myself. And I've only made a couple of recordings of me practicing my voice acting on my Twitter public. But when it comes to Discord and VCs, I also sometimes just do that to make the conversation a little bit more fun and to practice too. So if you want to check out me singing several songs and to check out my voice acting, you can go to my Twitter at Zendria, ZENDRIA 000. Let's talk about my major and my minor. My major is psychology. Originally, when I came into college, I wanted to study physics. But when the pandemic happened, I was really removed out of an environment where I could really be engaged in my learning. And it was already hard as it was, starting off with my first physics class. So just trying to follow along with the lectures and with assignments, it was pretty hard. And I thought to myself, I don't know if this is really the right path to follow. I don't really know if I really want to become a physicist anymore. And because there were so many people in my life, whether that be my family members, my friends, my fellow students in Zoom calls that I was in, there were definitely signs that the pandemic was heavily taking a toll mentally on the people around me. And because of that, it really made me think, in my local sphere, there are people who definitely are going to need help. And whether or not they go to therapy is really their choice. But I just wish that I knew how to talk to my loved ones and try to see, okay, what is the best that I can do in this situation to really try to help them out. It's quite the challenge. It's definitely not easy. But I feel that if I continue along this path of studying psychology, that I can help other people. The pandemic definitely had a toll on me. It put me in a place, in a hole, deeper than I've ever been before, in a dark place. And I thought to myself, I don't want to feel like this way anymore. I'm going to try to rise above that. And when I do, I'm going to do so with the knowledge and skills that is not going to only help me in the long run with my mental life and emotional life, but also to help others too. So that's why I continue with psychology. There's the interest of clinical psychology as part of the reasons that I've mentioned before, but I've also really just been interested in the human mind and how it works cognitively, and how things like memory, making synthetic connections from one topic to another, how attention works, how all of these things work, and how do you improve these mental faculties? Are there general techniques that you can use to improve how you think, to improve how you remember, to improve how creative you are? And that is something where I've been reading books, I've been reading research papers, I've been watching videos, I've been doing my own sort of moments where I sort of just think, okay, how do you think this works? And that's delved me into areas of like psychology and also philosophy and a swath of other various academic fields. It's partly the reason why I I'm very open to learning. So my I'll go into my plans later on of what path I really want to take with psychology. But let's talk about my minor in philosophy now. Because I have that interest in cognitive psychology, and as I mentioned before, the general techniques of how to improve how you think, how you perform mentally, it's drawn me to areas in philosophy such as symbolic logic and critical thinking, which aims at sort of how do you structure your thinking in a way that's more logical. And the classes that I've taken in college were really very interesting when it came to introduction to logic. I think that's the name, and also critical thinking. Those two classes were very interesting, and I had quite the intellectually stimulating conversations with my professors in their office hours. But aside from logic courses, I also enjoy continental philosophy, enjoyed reading about the genealogy of good and evil by Friedrich Nietzsche, and also The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. Both of those books just really gave me insights onto what do we actually think is, so just talking about the meaning of life and talking about what really is good and evil, thinking beyond what our everyday assumptions or everyday intuitions actually are, to challenge those beliefs and to see what is really going on below that's normal everyday structure. Talking about my goals with the podcast now. So I'm going to be uploading these episodes onto YouTube, but I'm also hoping to expand into other territories, other social media platforms, such as SoundCloud, and maybe I'll have to just really do my research with what other social media platforms there are that I can post my podcast on, but also like really engaging with my audience too in whatever way it's possible. Maybe I can do, those live Twitter streams? I forgot what they're called, but basically doing that and maybe inviting fans of the show to just come on and just talk. I'll really have to figure out the logistics with that one, but moving on. I want to interview Hololive and or Holostars fans. It's just been something that is one of the first things that I've been thinking about when I first thought about making this podcast, that I thought, it would really be interesting to have a conversation with this person or that person to really express our interest in the talents and the VTubers that we watch, to share that love. I also want to try to get some indie VTubers. There are definitely people on my list who I know have a good chance of being on the show, and it'll be really great to talk with all of those people. In terms of channel growth, if I can get to 100 subscribers, and it's gonna take some time definitely, I'd really be appreciative of that. I talked in the pre-pilot episode about shoutouts and how I want to sort of like hold that off because I want to get a bigger following. I think that even though some people might say, 100 subscribers, that's really small, at least if I can get some followers and to share the people that I admire, whether it be, like I said, the artists, the writers, the VTubers, the content creators, or whoever it is, to show love to these people. Talking about my future IRL goals, first and foremost, I believe that I want to graduate from my undergrad, which I'm coming very close. This is my last semester, and I'll be graduating or finishing off school in December. I think the beginning of December. I'm very excited. At the same time, nervous too, because once I'm done with the final semester, that's when I plan on getting more job experience with working in research of psychology. I don't necessarily know what that research would entail, but really I'm open to whatever experiences that I can get. Moving on to graduate school from that work experience, I'm gonna pursue a master's in clinical psychology. And from what I've heard, that if you get that master's, it's pretty much enough to start working as, like a therapist or clinician. And so I at least want that before ever deciding to move on to a PhD program. Because to do research, I think that you need a PhD to make that happen. And with cognitive psychology, where that is a field that I definitely want to do research in, or if I decide in the future after still taking my master's in clinical, if I want to pursue cognitive psychology, that is definitely a place, that is definitely a path that I can continue to take. It could be cognitive, but at the same time, if I want to continue to pursue a PhD in clinical psychology, that is something that I can also do. There's just different paths that I can take with this. So I'm trying to leave myself really open to how I'll think, what are my reasons are, how my experiences change as times move on into the future. Definitely something to look towards the future, as with this podcast. So, I hope that you enjoyed this first episode of Unmasked. I hope that you enjoyed, at least somewhat, hearing me talk about myself. If you made it towards the end, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you want to continue to support Unmasked, consider hitting that like button, subscribing, and if you want, you can also leave a comment down below. I am your friendly neighborhood podcaster Zen, signing out.